Yeah,
So to me, imposter syndrome is a lack of alignment with who we are.
absolutely. And that and
That's that's what
it's
it is.
that's why I think it's a gift because it tells you,
Right.
"Oh my goodness, I'm trying to be something I'm not," which is great,
Right.
which
Right.
is wonderful because we know the more you that shows up, the more things will happen, and this happens all the time, like
Hello. Hello, hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? How are you?
I am fine. I'm actually great.
I love it. I love it. I think you saw the look in my eyes. What do you mean
Like,
fine?
what do you mean just fine, right? Yeah.
That's what coaches do to each other. Fine.
What's behind that?
Okay.
What's
What's
behind that?
behind
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No, I caught
I mean,
myself.
in my opinion, fine is like content, but sometimes it's also like the first thing that comes to mind, right? And then, oh no, I'm actually great. I love that.
Yeah, and to celebrate that too, right? Because so
Celebrate that. Yeah.
often so often, it's become a habit when you ask people, like, "How you doing?" kind of a thing, and then everybody will say, "Well, I'm fine," even though that might be a lie in both ways. It might be, "I'm
Right.
actually not doing well, but I
Right.
don't want to tell you I'm doing badly." And the other thing is, I'm actually doing great, but I don't want to jinx it, or I don't want to, you know,
Oh, okay.
I don't want to
Right.
announce it because
Right.
because I know that you're not great or whatever. It's
Right.
like we're almost embarrassed to be doing well.
It's
And,
so true. And like, I think that I know that this is, we always do this, right? We just like go with what comes up. You know what happened there? You said fine. I was like, just fine, right? And I didn't say anything. I mean, I didn't even say just fine.
I know.
I said fine. And that brought you back to the present moment where you actually tapped in and you were like, I'm actually doing great. Like, really actually being present with that question and energetically realigning to where you're actually at and not where your mind is at in that moment, right?
Absolutely.
Um, yeah,
I mean, like, think about like a coaching call, right? Like when you have the first thing, like how's things going, kind of a thing, right? Immediately, the client goes back into what happened over the week,
into the story, into the
into all the
story.
story and the ups and the downs, and it's
Right,
like, no, no, how are you right now? Oh, I'm great. Perfect. Right? Because it really doesn't matter what
right,
happened. It's
right.
where are you today in the present moment? So,
Right.
hey, good catch. I
And,
like
this is not to say that that the story doesn't matter. That's not what we're saying. The story is relevant and the story matters.
that.
And the
Mhm.
story is, if is your experience, right? So it matters to acknowledge that. But that what is not useful to sit in it for too long, right? So the story tells us, points us to patterns, right?
Yes.
Points
Yeah.
us to places where we can look at and see where there's, you know, disempowerment, discontent, anger, whatever it is, right? But what I'm finding as I evolve as a person and as a coach is that once that story has been told once or twice and we looked at it and we went and moved and shifted some stuff, and really, the only way into or towards transformation is to put the story aside and start shifting other layers within us. They're
Mhm.
not necessarily the story, right? That's not necessarily just the mindset, right? The mental reframing. I used to call myself a mindset coach, and then as I evolved as a coach, I really intentionally removed that from
Mhm.
my label because that's not all that I do. And the more actually I work with even plant medicine and the more I realize it's such a layered experience. It
Yes.
opens up all these other channels or puts us more in touch with that intuitive channel, energetic channel, emotional channel. And that's where the real transformation happens when you shift all of this stuff on these other layers of being.
Yeah.
We are hyper focused on the mindset. We're hyper focused on how we think about things. And I think this is a good segue that can lead us into today's topic, which is
Mm.
imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? I mean, before we started, I was like, oh, that's more like a career oriented conversation, right? And that's very common for coaches, for instance, right? To feel
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, or when you have to perform or do a presentation or speak, right? Public speaking, like that can really, really kick in. But honestly, as I was speaking, I was like, when else have I felt imposter syndrome? There were moments in my parenting role that I felt that, right? So it's something that it's been labeled as that, but it really is something a little bit deeper than what it seems. It's not just like, I'm afraid of speaking in front of people, right? It's, well, what's behind that,
Yeah.
right?
And I think you pointed to two areas of where we tend to look to, but one we kind of lean towards because we're culturally habitually centered that way, and that's our intellect.
Right,
So when I've ever come across imposter syndrome in my own personal life or from a client, it's coming from an intellectual side of things, right? It's sort of like, oh, even the clues, right? I think I don't belong here. I think I'm not good enough. I think, kind of a thing. And but but when you start to get back into a present moment, and I'll say the word because I think healing happens on the spiritual side, the formless side of things, right? And
mhm,
when we can silent or separate our thinking about what's happening in the moment and just reflect on what is actually happening on the moment, we realize then, and then this is where, for me, insight and realization is where healing happens. You realize that, well, wait a minute, when I am more myself, things actually do happen. And
right.
I mean, you gave a perfect example when you had to do your presentation over the weekend on your
Right.
launch, your group. Like that to me, I mean, it's giving me goosebumps thinking about it right now. Like the more
Yeah, I mean,
you go ahead.
the more you lean into yourself, and
Yeah.
that's very much this understanding of having done the work on all these different layers, right, has given me a deeper understanding of how they show up, these different layers, right, which we don't necessarily pick up on when we're super busy here, right?
Mhm.
And it's when this busyness slows down that we can actually tap into the rest of it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the more I've done the more I have shifted my work into not doing as much mental processing and digging. And again, I want to underline again and again, it's not that that's not necessarily necessary. That
Just
is a necessary part of the work. I'm not saying do not go dig and look at trauma and all of that stuff. That is a part of it. But what happens is that oftentimes then we get stuck in that loop.
Mhm.
So it's important to do that part and then also move all those things all on all the other layers to really understand that a mental block is not just in your mind. A mental block can be in your emotions, can be in your body, can be ca- creates an energetic block, right? Shifts your energy, right? When you feel upset, you show up very differently. I mean, that's something that we all experience. We don't talk about it often, but like an angry person that's not speaking looks angry, has a different energy, right? That they bring into the room. A happy person that's not saying a single word shows up very differently energetically, right? And so
Mhm.
when we really get in touch with these different layers and realize that if the mindset has been worked on and then I'm still feeling imposter syndrome and I'm still feeling like blocked in some ways because these other layers haven't been cleared, right? And so I really learned to really pay attention to these different parts of us and really shifted my coaching into that as well, learning from plant medicine because that's very much how the intelligence behind it works, right? It really points you towards your own innate ability to heal, your own innate ability to see things in a different way, your own innate intelligence, frankly, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So the more you focus on shifting those layers and like the more you're sealing in that transformation actually becomes a much more amplified and holistic transformation when you do the work in this sense. And so when we're speaking about imposter syndrome, that to me is one of the most talked about, the most like um, common challenges that people have, right, in relationship to their work or like feeling like they're not worthy of that
Well,
opportunity or that, right?
I,
It can seem like a strictly mindset issue, but it really is not. Nothing is strictly just mindset.
well, it's not that I'm okay. I'm going to make maybe one or two bold statements. Okay.
Go ahead,
Okay.
do
Put your
it.
seatbelts on. There's no such thing as imposter syndrome. It's made
Okay.
up. Okay.
It's me,
It's a
all of
concept.
it, right?
Right.
Right.
It's all made up. Right. But what it points to is it's a particular type of thinking, a particular type of feeling. And I often talk about, with people and my clients is about getting a feel for things, right? So when you've now we have this label called imposter syndrome, right? It
It's
was
a
made up.
label. It's a
Yeah, it's a
label.
label,
Yeah.
right? It's a label for a behavior and a type of feeling that people get. Now, what I want to point out is that when you notice that you have this type of feeling and behavior going on, it points to me that you're being less authentic. You're trying to be something, you're trying to adapt to the world in a way that you think you should be adapting to, but you can't, and therefore you feel inadequate to it. And
Mhm.
so what I ask people to do is try less, but show up more. So it's sort of like, well, you don't have to figure this out. Like we hear your and I'm sure I would love you for to share your experience about your presentation. But I've often coached clients that way in the sense that, oh, why are you stressed out? Well, I've got this real big presentation to do, and well, do you know the material? Yeah, I know the material. So where is your stress coming from? He's like, well, I don't want to fail. I don't want to. I don't want to. Right? It's like, well, what happens if you're too successful? Like, there's that other side of the coin too, right? People are afraid of
Right.
failure. Well, what happens if you're really successful? It's like, well, then people are going to find out that I'm a fraud. Are they? Are you a fraud? It's
Is it
like,
really true? Right? And
right?
if
Oh,
there's some truth to that, then let's look at that, right?
well, yeah. But when we show up and respond according to the moment, magic happens and you realize, oh my god, I have capacity. I am more than capable. And you touched on, the your inner wisdom, your innate intelligence, right? You drop into the zone, and the zone is
Right.
where where it all happens.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. And it's also, to me, when we shift into thinking this way, then we really shift more towards our authentic selves.
Yes.
We reconnect with ourselves. And for me, this has become really central to the work that I do. It's about reconnecting to ourselves. All of it. It's about reconnecting to ourselves with radical honesty.
Yeah. Yes.
Not what we think that we need to tap into, not what we think that we need to be, but like really reconnecting with our innate nature, right? Our innate wisdom and capacity to heal and perform and tap into that intelligence, that intuition, right? And be able to trust it, right? So, yes, there is some so there's some definitely some work that needs to be done on the mental level. I'm not saying that 100% that needs to be there. But going back to the presentation, what I realized that really shifted in me was that while the presentation was about a coaching program that I am, that we launched and that, for coaches.
Mhm.
And it's very, it is pretty technical from some aspects of it, of what the outcome is going to be and the steps that we're going to take and what specifics we're going to do. I had written them down and people had all of this, and that's why they decided to join. And I felt like for me in that moment, what was important was to connect with them on on a personal level, on a human to human level. Yeah, I can talk to you about all those details, but you already have them, right? So your mind has been served
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
you needed,
Nice,
right?
I like that. Your mind is
Yeah, has been served. And now I wanna connect with you on all these other levels,
mhm,
right? So I ended up picking a song that really is meaningful to me and that helps me. The words in the song really help me think about life in a different way, right? The vibration of the song really opens up the mind in a different way, and those are things that I really have been interested in and working with
can
in my
you share what the
life.
song title is?
The song is Grandmother's Fear by East Forest.
Okay.
Yeah, we can put it in the notes. I can put links to it. And then I guided them through breath work to drop them into their body, right, and slow down the mind.
Mhm,
They connected emotionally to the song and the music, right? And then I was like, okay, I'm sure the intellect now may come back in. So I had 5 questions that I put out. And they were pretty deep, introspective questions that were aimed at triggering a certain thought pattern to
yep,
get people
yep,
to think in a certain way,
yep,
but they required some reflection, right? So I knew some people were going to be like, oh my god, how am I going to answer all of this? So I asked them to reflect on those questions briefly, and then I asked them to put their pens and papers and phones down and to let go of the questions
mhm.
and to sit with me through the next experiment, which was I had them watch a hypnotic video for 5 minutes. And with the intention of I connected with each one of these questions and with my overarching intention and purpose.
Mhm.
And then I am going to allow those answers to come whenever they come. It may not be on this call, it may not be tomorrow, but I please allow and surrender to the process. Let it just come to you rather than,
Yeah.
and when it comes, you 100% can sit down and write it. Coaches are like, I'm gonna write this down, take notes. And so that's what I did. I had no idea how this was gonna land and how it was gonna go. I mean, as I shared with you, my kid interrupted that process 4 times. Thankfully, he wasn't doing any of these segment. Actually, it was one of them was doing the hypnotic part. Anyway, it felt a lot worse experiencing it than when I rewatched it. It wasn't nearly as bad. But I didn't know I was gonna land. I had never done anything like this, and this was my way of bringing all the parts of me back together. So the coaching, the psychedelic work, the way I connect with nature,
Yeah,
actually,
the spiritual
is a
side, yeah.
very, very big part of it. And it's like, how do I bring that in, to a Zoom call? Well, there's ways, and I have other ideas how else I can do that in the future. But what the reflection and the response from them in the end was beyond what I could have expected. I mean, one woman had like massive insight from it about who she is. Like, it's like for the first time, I know exactly what I do, where I'm at. And it's like, and this happened in the space between. Transformation happens in the space between.
It's not
Transformation happens in the silence, in the moments of pause, when
that's where
you
music
really
occurs.
find yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Music
So
is
that,
in between the notes, right?
yeah, music,
That's beautiful.
visual. So really, I felt like, well, I can't quite do the smell, even though I did do it for myself. And next time, I would probably recommend that people do it for themselves, right? But like visually, auditory, mental, right? The emotional and energetic, right? Because the music has taps into energy.
Yeah.
all of those senses were tapped into, and when the mind is out of the way, then we're able to get like I was really, really shocked by the amount of the depth of the insights that came through. Yeah.
And
So
and 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 I'm glad you were shocked, but it's also a huge insight for you in the sense of
it's
like,
a huge insight. Yeah.
this shit
Yeah.
works. It's like
It
it's
works. And it's like, well, obviously it's in person is a different experience, but like it got me really, I brought the essence of all these things into a Zoom screen, right? So I
well,
was like,
like
what's the
yeah,
essence of this?
but you see, if you sat with it intellectually, right?
I would have been like, what are they gonna think? And this is gonna look
One thing
whoa.
you go, it's like, "I can't do this under a Zoom. There's no
Right,
way that you can have this kind of experience,
right,
through a computer."
right.
All like and the other thing about our intellect, as much as, it has a lot of power, um, is it's always looking for answers immediately.
He wants the answers right now, which is why I was like, put those pens down, put them
Exactly.
away.
Exactly, right? So there's a clue that people had that wonderful experience about, okay, why don't you sit with the unknown for a bit? Like, you don't have to come
Right,
up with an answer.
right.
And what I love about our innate wisdom is that we know that we can tap into it. We know that it's reliable. It's just not predictable. And I love when you said, "Oh, it may not happen right now. You may not get the answers tomorrow or the next day. It might happen in the shower where most brilliant ideas
I
happen."
did say that actually. I was like, you may be taking a shower, right?
But you
Yeah.
see, and this is like getting back to the like, this is the second thing I'm going to say, um, about imposter syndrome. It's actually a gift.
All of it is a gift, right?
Well, the idea of paying attention to noticing, oh my goodness, I'm in imposter thinking right now. And all it's telling you is you're getting more wrapped up in your intellect. You're getting more wrapped up in the way you think you should be doing, your expectations, all those things, right? Like even you even said that your presentation exceeded my expectations, right? Well, that's your that was your intellectual expectations, right?
I think what a better example of like where I could have really felt imposter syndrome. Who am
Oh,
I to guide these people? Who am I to speak to these things? And like what I found that it's a really effective way to really slow that down is I just have to connect to who I am, reconnect with myself and be myself. And there is no feeling an imposter
no,
when you're really connected to who you are,
you
right?
can't be an it's
How
virtually
can I be an
impossible.
imposter, right?
You can't
Be
be.
yourself. And actually, very much what the mastermind theme is around finding our own imprint.
Yeah.
Like really infusing everything that we do with who we are, right? And I'm going to go ahead and say, you got to know who you are and be tapped into that in order to do that, right? So, imposter syndrome to me,
Mhm.
the way I see it now is it's really not about do I know enough? Have I done enough? Who am I? It's really about who am I?
Who are you in the moment?
Who am I?
Yeah, you're
Period.
trying to be yeah, like, if you're
Am
trying
I
to
connected with that? And
yeah,
am I okay with that person that I am, that I see and acknowledge transpiring in everything that I do?
yeah,
So to me, imposter syndrome is a lack of alignment with who we are.
absolutely. And
That's what
it's
it is.
that's why I think it's a gift, because it tells you,
Right.
"Oh my goodness, I'm trying to be something I'm not," which is great,
Right. Right.
which is wonderful because we
Right.
know the more you that shows up, the more things will happen. And this happens all the time. Like I know in the paramedic world, right? Imposter syndrome shows up a lot because there's a lot of pressure and anxiety, and you always want to do right, and you don't want to fail, and there's lots of extra little pressure there and a lot of stress. And so you start to act as if you are something that you're not because There's a thing called, well, just fake it till you make it. Have you heard that?
Right? You start to act as who you think you need to be.
Exactly, exactly. And then you wonder why things are screwing up, why you're not connecting with your patient, why are you not connecting with what's going on? It's because you're not being authentic. You are acting as an imposter. You are an imposter.
But your mind is driving the show. Your mind
Absolutely.
is telling you all the stories, and your mind is believing all the stories, and your mind is telling you all of the beliefs that
Hmm.
you have accepted and adopted, or you're unconsciously even running. Most of
Yeah.
them, actually, we're unconsciously running. So you're up against your mind, and you're not connected with who you actually are because there's a
And
part
just
of
to
you
be
that
clear,
believes,
this is your
huh?
mind. This is your
This is
mind.
this is your
Yeah,
mind, which is not who you are, right?
exactly. Yeah.
And when we are able to make that distinction, and we've said this so many times on this podcast,
Hmm.
it's once we really grasp that we're not our minds, that we're all these other layers of being. Once
Yeah.
you reconnect to that with acceptance, without judgment,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
With by embracing all that we are, well, then there's no going wrong. But there has to be that level of mental mindset work to where we understand we're not our minds and we accept the different parts of ourselves. We stop judging them, right? One of the most profound lines that really resonates with me with this song that I shared, that I it just gives me tears every time I listen to it,
Hmm.
is a lifetime of judgment against myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, really sit with that. That's what this is all about. This is where our limitations are coming from, the judgment against ourselves. And that really deeply resonated. I did spend a lifetime judging myself.
Well, I didn't share this with you. I'll share it publicly. The My dad is, he got injured and he's in the hospital. He's 94. He's had a lot of time to sort of reflect and think, and he's been sharing lots of
Mhm.
anecdotal stories and things like that. And you talk about what you just said about limiting beliefs, and he started talking about all the missed opportunities that he was presented. Like, people are saying, all you got to do is walk through the door. All you got
Mhm.
to do is just show up at the front door. All you got to do, kind of a thing. And he would get to the front door and turn around and talk himself away. And he did that. And he says, I don't, I, he says, I did it so often. Right. And you talk about, like that's the imposter. Like, you're like, it's a disservice to
It's
you.
a mind running the show. It's a
Yeah.
mind running the show.
And
Yeah.
when you allow it to do that, it fills a life up with regret and missed opportunities. And then we can go down a rabbit hole and beat ourselves up over it and all this other kind of stuff, right? But you know what I love about what we do, and what we've learned as coaches and stuff, is that you can hit that reset button anytime you want, right? You don't have to
100%.
wait till you're on your deathbed to sort of realize, oh shit, you mean I could have walked through that door?
And that you're never late. It's
And
never too late. It's
never,
never too late to
no.
start living life from a more authentic, aligned,
And
and
contentment.
content, and also fulfillment, and also feeling like you're in flow with life versus in this pushing game, in this like pushing up against things, right? Be in flow with it rather than push it.
So just to wrap up this, so it doesn't sound like a really sad story about my dad. The truth sets you free. Powerful,
Mm,
powerful, powerful phrase, right? And so as he was speaking about that, right, and then I kind of gently pointed to those were just certain moments, right? But they had such an influence on him. But when you think of
Mhm.
the tape measure of his life, right? So if you've got, like, he's 94, so if you've got, say, 94 inches of life that he's lived already, that might have been a half inch over here at 13. That might have been a quarter of an inch when he was 20, right? In the scheme of things, when he reflected back on his life, he had a good life. It was a good
Ah,
it was a good life, right? When you but when you focus on the tiny little segments, oh, if I had taken that opportunity at 13 and a half inches, my life would have been so much different. But when he got that out of the way, he realized how good his life actually really was, regardless of the missed opportunities, so regardless, it's amazing how we can take a fraction of an inch and turn it into a mile.
well, and really identify with it, really
Well,
make
yeah,
it mean everything about ourselves. And the beautiful thing about who we are is that we're not just one thing. We're not just one level of being. We're all these different levels of being. And we're so hyper focused on the mental that is really where like human suffering is coming from. It's all
we're,
thought.
we're doing it worse and worse. I had an
Mhm.
opportunity of taking my one of my granddaughters to school, and she's a teenager, going on 40. Like most teenagers nowadays. But society is building it that way, right? It's sort of like, and they're
Mhm.
talking about all the mental health issues in the school, and various other things. And we talked briefly about labels, and I said, we got this thing about, you know normal, right? A handful of people have labeled that this kind of behavior is normal. And if you're outside this normal, you could be called a genius. And if you're below this side of normal, you could be called challenged, you know?
Right.
And the problem with the labels is once you got one, regardless of where you are on that particular spectrum, you're kind of stuck there. And that was the thing with my dad. He got stuck with a label of I'm not good enough, and who am I to walk through this door? And yet, the people that told him to walk through those doors saw more of him than he saw him himself. And
Of
and
course.
and that's the
Oh,
truth, right?
yeah.
People always see more of you than you will ever see.
Than you ever see of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but there's
mean,
so many clues in that.
but that's again is it's a mental process, right? Of how we label things and see people and make meaning. It's all a mental process.
Yeah,
And what the more I do this work, the more I bring these two deep passions together, right? Which is ultimately the same work. It's about
yeah,
healing,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So these two different approaches, I should say, to healing, right, and transformation. And the more I really realize it's what is and this really I learned this from doing the work with plant medicine is when we experience things that is deeply transformational. One experience is worth
yeah.
multiple conversations, right? Words will never make it justice. Words will never accurately describe an
No,
experience. And
it
so the more we can experience ourselves, and the more we reconnect to
that's why
ourselves.
how-to books have never really worked. It's
Right.
because people have taken the words. Now, I've recently been exploring some of the ancient wisdom books. I'm
Mhm.
beginning, and there are things that I had absolutely no clue. Like who are these people, the Gnostics, kind of a thing, and kind of looking at how the Bible was put together, and it's really really interesting stuff. But what I'm appreciating about the ancient wisdom, and we're talking wisdom from 2000, 3000, like Platism, and things like that, is they actually talk about that too. Like, they're it's they talk about the difference between knowing, a small k, and knowing with a big K. And they
Right.
talk and knowing with the small k is that intellectual understanding
The
of how
knowledge, yeah.
knowledge piece, right? But it's but the healing happens through that experiential knowledge when you start to realize, oh, I'm not my thoughts. Oh, I'm not my judgments. Oh, kind of a thing. And then the world just changes. It's
Right, because you allow yourself to experience the essence
yes,
of
the essence
life,
and
the
of who you
essence
are.
of who you are, the
Yes.
essence of what you bring, the essence of what moves you and shakes you and gives you a sense of happiness or fulfillment, or the
Yeah.
essence of who you are,
Yeah.
right? That essence is a fingerprint, and it's unique to each one of us. That
Hmm.
essence is not something that you can pick up on a book.
No,
That essence is not knowledge.
no. You have to. I was using this analogy the other day. You have to release yourself from the dock to get out into the ocean. You have to. You can't experience life sitting on the dock. You have to get out there. You have to experience the wind in your sails, and in case my hair, but
Wind in the hair. I'll experience that for you. I can describe it to
but
you.
but life is a see. Sid Banks, one of the teachers I really like, talks about life being a contact sport, and I kind of took it as yes, there's a contact sport in the sense of you're going to get your knocks and bruises and things like that. But I also took it as contact in a very energetic way, in the sense of you have to be connected to life. You have to be participating in life. You to get the emotions. It's the emotions and the feelings that tell you that you're alive.
Right.
And to realize how lucky, like it's astronomical how lucky we are to actually be to have been born. Like the odds of us not even being here, kind of a thing. Like, yeah, no, we are miracles and we are unique.
And we are you. And going back to imposter syndrome, right? If this is not a testament to how much that is not about all the things that you think it is,
Mhm.
where this conversation went is very much pointing you back to yourself, right? What parts of yourself are you judging in that moment that are creating this sense of inadequacy or unworthiness? Because that's what imposter syndrome is. I'm not worthy of sitting here and telling you
And
things or
and it's
whatever it is, right?
and I'd like our audience to also understand, when you have that feeling of imposter syndrome, it doesn't mean that you're doing the wrong job or you're
Yeah, right, right.
right, because a lot of times people look at this going, oh, I obviously am not cut out for this job. No.
I mean, I would say maybe, maybe not, but
Yeah.
like that's definitely not the indicator. The
Yeah.
indicator, again, is when you connect with yourself
Yeah.
with deep honesty
Yeah.
and on different layers of who you are,
Yeah.
and ask the question and get the answer not from the mind.
No.
Is this the right job for me? Because I could have said that, like maybe about a year ago, I started feeling like not imposter syndrome, but like not as connected to my work, right? So
Mhm.
the mind immediately went into, what am I doing? I took the wrong path again, blah, 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 right? And really what was happening was there was misalignment there, because there was my work was shifting into something a little different. And it wasn't something that I was integrating in who I was
Yeah.
yet
Yeah.
into the work that I was doing. And so it was more about that. But if I had to go based on my judgment, based on my uh, intellectual assessment, I could have been like, this is not for me. I was wrong all along. And what am I doing? I'm such an imposter coaching people. And then I feel, well, I guess I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? Coaching people through things. And then I don't feel as connected about it anymore, blah, 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 blah. And the more I thought about it from an intellectual point, and the more like I do remember you being like, well, that's not the reflection from the outside, like it just made no logical sense either, right?
Yeah.
And that was actually the very thing and I'm connecting these dots now. This was the very thing that pointed me to processing things on different levels. And I remember telling you, I'm shifting into um, somatic processing now. I
Mhm.
realize that I've done a lot of mental processing, and I just need to release this stuff from my body. And that was not an intellectual choosing. It was more guided. You know,
Okay.
when
Yeah.
there's moments of reconnecting with myself, being in nature. I do a lot of my work when I'm in nature, whether I'm by myself or with clients. Like, it's my office, my second office, right? If I need to come up with something, that's where I go. That's how I came up with the what am I going to do in this presentation?
Oh, I know.
And I just connected with nature. I connected with the things that make me feel really creative and in flow and calm and connected. And I think, that's the medicine right there.
Yeah.
When you feel imposter syndrome, instead of sitting there and trying to analyze it, just little breath work, hold your breath for a few seconds, super simple, slow down. And then from there, you can make the choice of getting out in nature. Because if you don't slow down, you're going to sit down, like type,
That yeah, yeah,
think, and all of that, right? Go in nature, just let it all go. Let it all go and experiment. Get out there and reconnect with yourself. You have the intention of figuring this out in the back of your mind. The mind has been fed.
put it in the back burner.
Put it in the back of your mind. Go connect with nature, reconnect with yourself, breathe the air, feel alive and see what happens. And what happens is magical. It's the guidance comes in. It's a miracle. There's who is whispering in my ears all of a sudden. Why am I hearing all these things? Right?
That voice
Why am I
sounds
so
familiar. Is that
connected?
you, mom?
I know. It's like, oh, okay. Well, and like I think the more you do that, right? Because
Yeah.
then there's the piece of I heard all these things and I connected, and now the mind comes back in. Oh, that was just
Yeah.
you like we need to trust it, right? The work then is like,
Yeah.
can you actually trust that voice?
So
And yeah,
there's an episode right there. Living a
right,
guided life, right?
living a
You know,
guided
is
life.
can you actually, and I've been challenged by executives about that. Are you telling me to just live by the seat of my pants? And I go, "Mm, mm."
I wouldn't label it that way.
Oh, I wouldn't label it that way. Anyways, um, this has been a really fun, energetic episode. I hope our audience got heard something between the words.
Connect with the energy, connect
Yeah.
with the energy. And that's the very last point in closing. Once you do all of this, your energy body changes. You show
Yeah.
up differently, and
Yeah.
like you start attracting different things in your life. People
Well,
respond to you differently.
it's amazing what happens. Like in without a lot of effort. Like you just things just
Right, a
wow.
lot of that. You walk in your own shoes with a
Yes.
very different energy, with a
Yeah.
very different comfort level. And
Yeah.
that's really imposter syndrome requires, yes, reflection and a shift, energetic shift, a shift on different layers, right? That's what
And if
that is.
and if you think that you need more confidence, try being yourself more.
Where can we buy confidence, Rick?
I don't know. If
Can we order it online?
maybe I think I have a jar of it in my pantry actually.
Last time I checked, confidence comes through is really an energetic, palpable thing that you
It's
receive from someone, right?
when you're
Yeah.
as close to your essence as possible, you
Mhm.
ooze out confidence because
Right.
you're because you don't have to pretend to be anything else other than you. So
Right.
there you go. Anyways, hey,
So good to
fun
talk
stuff.
to you. I could go for hours and hours
Oh,
and hours.
I know. Both
We'll
of us
keep
could.
it for next episode.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that we're ever gonna run out of topics or um, our conversation can really ever be flat. It hasn't happened in what, how many hundred and something episodes?
109,
Um, 109, yeah. I don't think they're all out yet, but Anyway, always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for anyone who has tuned in. If you found value in this, share it. Whoever you think needs this,
Yeah,
and help us amplify our impact. This is why we do this. We want to help people see things from different perspectives and have more tools and ways of looking at life than what the mind tells us.
there's another way. There's another way.
There's many other ways, right?
I heard a really good metaphor about there are several ways to get to the top of the roof. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Anyways, you have an awesome week.
You too,
Um,
Rick.
keep spreading your sunshine, and we'll tap in again, and hopefully everybody else will join us again.
Everybody else will join us again.
Of course you will. Of course you
See
will.
you next week,
See you,
everyone.
see you here again next week.
Come back. Bye for now.
Bye bye.